fantastic to be here. Thanks very much for inviting us. It's a real honor and a privilege. Um, After being here for the whole day yesterday and really enjoying hearing all the presentations and also this morning's presentation, it's become ever so clear once again, as if we need confirmation of it, what a sort of wild little wild card department we really are. Um, it's been 7 years. I first started managing what then was called digitization and digital services in October 2015. It's been quite a journey. It's been very emotional at times, and I never really, I catch on to things sometimes very late. I never really understood until sort of it started creeping up on me a couple of years ago that often I think we present a threat, to be very honest, to the colleagues, because so over the years, actually, the department was always meant to be 7 people. At the moment, we're 9 because we got an addition of 2 GIS people that came in from another space to 9. None of us are librarians. Not one of us has studied librarianship. So I'm really sorry. I apologize deeply and sincerely. We're the Luddites, we're the crazy ones, the outliers, free of free of the knowledge that you all have. And I only have 15 minutes, so I'm gonna have because the real part is actually you're gonna want to hear what Sanjin has to say. So I'm just gonna make some introductory remarks. So looking at where we started. Sorry. Looking at where we started, so I mentioned sort of 7 years ago, and obviously as soon as this whole idea of digital curation, data curation started, we had the famous moment where the NRF wanted data management plans and they wanted research data shared, and suddenly this also fell into my department, and we had to get going somewhere, and obviously, like most of us, I think we looked at this research project life cycle and this research data management life cycle model. And we just hung on to this model for a while, just in order to get going, I guess. So this idea of going from planning and designing all the way through, discovery, reuse, and site. And so over time, we built little platforms and services to as little offerings along that life cycle from a very generalist perspective. So obviously, as Prof. Chiwari just shared, we're not subject experts in anything, and we rely heavily on good partnerships across the university, which is sort of our latest addition to the services over the last 2 years, which is this community of data stewards who perform that expert role across campus in the various disciplines. So from the platform UCT DMP through to the Digital Scholars series that Sanjin is going to be talking about a bit, through to a digital preservation platform, I believe you've also just started implementing the use of the Open Science Framework as a kind of research data dashboard, signing up with Figshare for institutions as far back, I think, as 2017, and getting going with securely sharing and openly publishing data. And then also what Sanjin's going to be talking about, Ibali, running on Omeka S software and open source software to migrate our digital collections to, but not just the library's digital collections. So a lot of what we, I guess, are doing a little bit differently to how it used to be done is to not just look inside the library. So if we need a digital collections platform for the special collections, then surely that platform can also do more than just showing the library's special collections, because there are collections all over campus, right? I mean, there are on every campus, I think, collections that are not directly within the libraries and that don't need to be within the library in order to, fulfill the minimum requirements of needing online presentation. Same with digital preservation. it's my strong belief that the library will never be able to sort of leverage enough funding to maintain a digital preservation and service and system. And why should it? Why should this not also be a central service funded collectively from across? And that particularly has to do with, I think, statutory requirements around papaya. Your finance department, your HR department, your admin archives, your all departments actually are going to have to show that they're able to securely store for particular retention periods and securely delete as proven by some sort of ledger, uh, particular forms of assets. So this is just the same thing folded open. From planning and designing through to managing, storing, preserving, we've slowly, bit by bit, over the years, been able to implement a system and a service along the research data management lifecycle. And obviously, we don't look at it just so it's difficult to draw lines around data. So I'm not quite sure about the data literacy as being separate. I think there's a lot of overlap. It's not a disagreement in any sense. It's more like I'm prompted to think. We've had to pick up a lot of skills along the way that allow us to think a little bit further than I guess just in terms of a preservation platform. What was the first thing that we needed to do is we had to spin up some sort of a website. That was actually sort of the very first thing we did. But initially, I think it was just, sort of the bottom left-hand corner of this picture. This picture is just trying to graphically represent how it looks at the moment as a concept map or as a site map. It is actually all hyperlinked, so if you get the slides, you're welcome. But actually, if you want to find out about digital library services at UCT Libraries, the website tells you everything. Just go on the website, it's all there. So there's nothing that I'm saying right now that's not on the website, other than maybe the little introductory thing that I just shared with you. So what did we need for the website? So what you'll always see in the background of my few slides to begin is a window in a software that I use with the team called Asana. Might be familiar. Some of you might be familiar with it. Other types of that kind of software are other vendors are called Trello or Jira. Also in Microsoft Teams, you got that little button for to do by planner or planner by to do. This is all the same concept. You have your little columns. We name them something like the ongoing stuff on the very left-hand side, that recurring stuff. Then what's to do, we're not yet busy with. What are we actually currently busy with doing? And what have we done? And done is a sort of IT speak for the client has approved as well. We don't just think we're done. It is done. It's acknowledged as having been done. And we've got a board like that for every single service and every single system. So there's a board for Ziva Hub, which is our fig share for institutions. There's a board for UCT DMP, which is our DMP roadmap-based online wizard for creating data management plans. There's a board for the GIS lab. There's a board for the data stewards community, etc. And on those boards, we put our ideas and we put our to-do things and we put what we're currently busy with, etc. And I think that also didn't come overnight. And not everyone loves it. But it's become really necessary because there's just so much going on, and you need to have a place that everyone has access to, that shows you what's going on at any moment in time. So we needed to first of all upskill ourselves in terms of Drupal, editing and the UCT websites on Drupal. We needed to also actually just create a Google Drive space and learn to keep it tidy and learn about collaborating without everyone feeling terribly stressed when they get an @ comment, and just sort of a digital etiquette of working together nicely on and learn things like libcul and basic HTML, maybe even some CSS. We needed to sign up to a few newsletters like Google My Business, Google Business Profile, etc. And there are obviously internal and external communities that we're part of. And that's just for the website. The website has its own Asana board as well. I'm going to be going over time if I go into so much detail with each slide. So I've introduced how this works. And if you want to look through the slides in more detail, you're so welcome. So, please use them as a kind of little leaflet or booklet if you want. So digitization was the existing service that was around the theses and dissertations. And then we needed to sort of put up a dashboard because we were kept being asked, where are you? What's the progress on this? And then you send the report, but it's not being read. So then we just went, okay, let's just put it online 24/7. It's always live. If the question comes, just send the link because the whole world can see how far you are. So then the digitization, I mean, obviously there's a whole range of skills that's necessary, and that never stops. You have to learn all the time. A new piece of equipment also has new software, and once you've learned how to work with that, there's also a new workflow in the background, maybe a new storage location or a new way of, changing formats or whatever. And there are various communities, and very, very important community for us has been the Digital Preservation Coalition. And then data curation, that was the beginning for us. Initially, they were called digital curators, and then I got into quite a lot of sticky territory because I kept getting told, no, that's not digital curation, what you want me to do. So I thought, no, well, then we must change the title of this job description and call it data curation. And then it is what you need to do. We need to do these things. We need these skills in the library. It's very obvious. So let's call it data curation if digital curation is somehow exclusive. And again, a huge amount of skills and training necessary on a regular basis. Again, the Digital Preservation Coalition and the National Data Stewardship Alliance and the Bit Curator Consortium, etc., give you access to all the kinds of things that are going on there. Newsletters, there's the archive and blog, there's the scholarly kitchen, there's numerous diglib, there's numerous, and of course, in terms of skills and training, you can go very, very deep. You can go as far as needing to learn to code in Ruby on Rails in order to maintain DMP roadmap. We do that in collaboration with ICTS, with our IT services. So it's very, very important, again, to have the right partners. So we also now offer training, and Sanjin will be talking about that. So what did we need for offering training? Well, we needed to learn how to better prepare and plan. Again, there was a lot of copywriting and shared editing. Google Slides has been a real boon because you can work together on a slide deck. It seems so simple and benign, but when we first started with that, it was a complete game changer because you could literally work together on something without sending it back and forth. Made it so much quicker. And learning how to use Everlytic and bulk email and again libcul and writing good invitations and moderating on MS Teams doesn't come naturally to everyone. Some of us are more nervous, some of us are just not experienced and didn't sign up to that kind of thing, and there's a lot of learning there. Again, newsletters, there are various libraries, mailing lists for various training opportunities. And of course, in terms of community, the more you are connected to other libraries, the more examples you have to borrow from in terms of how training is offered within that context. Digital scholarship, I won't even go into because we're going to have the digital scholarship expert himself talking just now. But one thing I'd like to mention is that in that space, the CoData RDA Open Science Summer School has played a big role in terms of upskilling and training and creating community. And then, of course, all the various communities around the tools. There's the carpentries, data carpentry, library carpentry, etc. But then also the communities around IIIF, the International Image Interoperability Framework. The communities around tools are really great. I mentioned earlier the Bit Curator Consortium for data curation. Okay, and I think I'd also like to mention the RDA, the Research Data Alliance Professionalizing Data Stewardship Working Group. We've been working on actually looking at what kinds of data stewardship are in existence, at what kinds of levels, at what kinds of institutions, and how could one actually work towards, if not formalized, then at least have it more formally acknowledged as a role in whatever shape or form it takes in those contexts. And then, of course, the Digital Preservation Coalition again. GIS, this literally received from the colleagues. I'm not going to read it out, but again, really key forums and key communities that are important to stay abreast. And then skills range from, and I think we're very lucky, obviously, with having two in-house, basically data analysts, right? Because everything else, we don't really go right into the data. But here we have colleagues who actually understand the data itself and understand how to manipulate it and analyze it and display it in a variety of ways, etc. And this is just a concept map for the data stewards and champions. And the way we think about it is very integrative. We don't draw hard lines between the hard sciences and the humanities, arts, and social sciences, to which we are going to be adding an L now to make it hustle, because we always forget law, but it's the same sort of idea that on that side, often people don't want to say, oh, we're working with data, we're working with sources, etc., and they're very concerned about copyright and all that. On the science side, we recently also were confronted with what you're talking about isn't data, it's actually capture. It shouldn't be called data. And so we're constantly challenged to rethink what we're doing. All right, so that has its own board, and we have a board for continuous professional development. And there I've diverged a little bit from how I've arranged the board from doing to do done. I've just given every sort of sub-team its own column. So digitization, put what they're currently busy with in terms of training up at the top, the data curators, the GIS staff, the Sanjin in digital scholarship, and myself. I mean, I'm obviously also constantly learning, so I put my little training modules there as well. And it's a nice thing you can copy and paste from later into your whatever performance review, your performance appraisal once a year, hopefully not more often than that. So over to Sanjin. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sanjin, and I work with Niklaas in the same team, which doesn't have any librarians or library staff. And as you saw from my bio, I'm not a librarian either. I actually come from theater into this job. Don't ask me how I got the job. But the job is called Digital Scholarship Specialist, which is really strange because I'm not a specialist in anything. And my first thing to get a specialist or head around was, what is digital scholarship? And as I was listening to the presentations yesterday virtually and today live, there's just so many overlaps, and I don't want to throw digital scholarship at you as another term and figure out where does this sit, but actually it's my job. I have to prove to people I do digital scholarship. So what I use is this kind of intersection of this graph, which has, I guess at the core of it, it's using digital tools and methods in discovery, research, teaching, and learning. So I quite like that. It's quite broad. I felt like I could do a lot of little things and say, oh, it's digital scholarship. But it's these three things that also make the job possible, because you kind of really want to be right in the center of this intersection. I think depending on what you, we always argue everybody's a digital scholar in a way because we're working in digital times. And at any point we're somewhere in these, little circles. Depends where we are. But of course, I guess within being like a point of call for people around this, the kinds of things that I'm asked to do or help people with has overlapped a lot with, in my previous life, I did a bachelor's in computer science. Um, and I was recognizing that as I was doing this job, a lot of the IT skills that you would call from there were kind of feeding in and really making me be able to actually do the job. And that there's data literacy in that, there's some programming in that, there's a lot of bits and pieces that get added up together. Um, and I guess where it comes for us is to echo what Niklaas was saying. A lot of the job that we do, besides helping people with research data management at a singular level, is to take collections in, look at what is in that collection, and find a way to put it somewhere online where people can access it in a nice, pretty, user-friendly way. It's the kind of like the path that we have to follow. So this particular diagram, and I guess my job primarily sits within ingesting and repository management. So if somebody says, I've got this collection, I've got to make it available online, can you help me? And it's to look through all the different kinds of things that I can contribute, my team can contribute, and that the person themselves can do to get this to a place where then that knowledge is kind of shared, or whatever that collection is. So I kind of want to, I guess, show you some of the things the range of things that we do. And of course, later on, you can talk to me more about it. So this project, the law department has stacks of training manuals that magistrates were using in the late 1990s and early 2000s to train themselves for like the new democracy. So they're like, we've got all these manuals, can we put them online? And the first thing we did was, here's a form to capture metadata for this. Because, sorry, we didn't have a dedicated librarian who's going to be able to do this. We wanted to actually get them to do the work. We talked about them, what is the major information that we need? We set up the form. They got their people to work on it. And by the end of this, there's, organized data, I wouldn't call it catalog, that's a bit extra, like mini catalog set of information relating to each workbook or whatever it is. Cleaning up other people's data that might have got messy along the way. So it's learning to, I think yesterday was somebody mentioned about knowing what tool to use for the right platform or right thing. So there's this tool called OpenRefine. I love it because it can look through your spreadsheet. And if you have typos around a particular name, it can tell you, for example, you have misspelled this person so many different times. Is this actually the same person? Can I just change all the cells to match one person's name? And it does that. It's that kind of thing that could take someone, if they go row by row, could take quite a long time to do, but to help, to find a piece of software that can help you with it. This is maybe data literacy, not quite data analytics, still cleaning up data, reformatting data. We tried, spreadsheets are scary for a lot of people. But we try to get them to get comfortable with it, or we try to get it in the right format. So there's a little bit of coding that we're kind of getting into, but it's trying to clean up data to make sure that it can be something that can be useful for others. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a really simple little piece of code. But one of the collections we're working with is from the Department of Sociology. They have taken early Issa newspapers from like the late 1800s and early 1900s. They have gotten scans from the National Library, and now they're basically converting it into a text format so that you, instead of just reading it as an image, you can actually download a Word document and look through it there. But they give me all, like, here's the years 1890 to 1899. Can you put them all within a subfolder for each edition? and there's like 600 plus pages. So to be able to write a little piece of script that can look at what they call the file and say, use the first 6 characters of the file, make me a subfolder, and copy all those ones in there, so that you go from a very flat structure to something quite organized. Once again, something that could take you manually. You would get so bored just dragging files from one thing to another. Um, and then this is like, even with something like Figshare that we have, the herbarium came to us and said, we want to digitize our whole plant specimen collection, 5 million perhaps. Um, and instead of manually uploading it one at one by Figshare, can we use the tools that Figshare provides to actually write programs that can kind of take those files and push them up one at a time? So, so all of these things leading up to even publishing these collections websites lead towards some kind of sharing and, I guess, towards an open access approach where this data that was hidden, or not hidden, but kept in a very secure location, or maybe within a researcher, gets now its time to be displayed outside for other people. But with that, and I think this is for me where I was trying to understand, and maybe this is where like data literacy, information technology, programming comes in, that when you're working in digital scholarship, there's different levels of it. And and like one of the first levels, like call it the 0th order, because it's the one that is, I think, a fundamental part of data literacy is around managing your data. And that can be research data. It could be even your own personal data. If we look at how busy our download folders get and how hard it is to find that proof of payment that we thought we sent to this person once upon a time. So there is that level. Then the next level is making digital recreations of like objects, so like the digitization part. And then the second order, or the really the third, I guess, section is how do we enhance what we've captured digitally with other tools to enable things to connect to each other and people to explore it in more detail. So instead of just putting like, here's all the newspaper images from the late 1800s, how do you use the metadata that people have captured so that if somebody says, oh, it's an article by this person, what other article has this person written in all these other newspapers? And you kind of need, even though I'm not a librarian, you need somebody who comes with library skills to be able to point to the researchers, look, this is the value of metadata. This is what you need to do to break things down so that people can go around and find it more easily. How we go about sharing these skills, it depends on the order of things in the project. Towards our students, and it's still mostly postgraduate, we have this regular series that runs about every 2 weeks, where we take a different component of research data management and give an hour webinar. And in a way, COVID really helped us out, because we went from having sessions where 6 people might show up to a room in a library to where like 90 people show up online. Okay, I don't know if all 90 are showing up like there. There was, during the early MS Teams days, there was somebody there who was driving in their car and left their camera on. And at that time, we couldn't disable that camera, so I was competing. We were competing for attention. But every year, we also tried to figure out, okay, there's some standard basic research data management, but then how do we do something a little bit extra? How do we, like a session on cleaning up your data, a session on sensitive data? So we try to share that. But also, I guess, as we're working with researchers or projects, we tend to show them a lot of what we do, so it doesn't feel like it's magic, that it's something that they could also upskill themselves to do. I must be honest, I learned a lot of this on the job, figuring out how to do this. And that's where open science is quite useful, because most people have had the same problems that I'm heading into, and that stuff is online. I think somebody had literally the same line, and I would not plagiarizing, because we had to send these presentations in a week ago, but there's a line yesterday in one presentation that somebody has had the same problem before and probably asked it. And the question is there, it's just about knowing how to find it. There's a lot of, especially around coding, which I think is one of my big things is to say, is to not be scared of learning how to code. There's a lot of free resources that can get you going. One of my favorites, one is free code camp, because it's almost like, it's not like a game, but it breaks it down into nice little levels, and you feel quite accomplished because you can do one in like a little bit of time and then wait and then do another one. And also the important thing, and I'm also notoriously bad at, but Niklaas does remind me, is to leave the notes behind of how you got something. So practice your own research data management. Sometimes you get very excited when you found the solution, and then you try to recreate it, and you're like, oh, how did that happen? So to leave the SOP or the standard operating procedure behind you. So I guess for me, that's just one thing around coding, is that whatever level of data literacy or whatever it is you're working on, trying to get a little bit to grips with how coding can help you do the boring stuff. When you find yourself doing something repetitively over and over again, you're like, surely there must be a way I can automate in the digital realm. And the physical realm, that's something else. But in the digital realm is how can, if there's a way to find a program, a code, it doesn't have to be a software that you purchase, because a lot of things can be found. It's a bit trickier to get to it, but you can find a solution that you can understand, and then you can adjust to suit what it is that you need. And to break problems like that into small chunks in order to be able to move on. Because I think, and it's something that I guess I'm still working towards, is every time I find myself like, oh, I feel like I've done this before, is like, do I then spend a day trying to figure out how to automate this, knowing that when I get asked to do this 2 months from now, I don't have to waste 2 days. I can just say, oh, I figured that out, use that code, adjust it, and move on. And that's something that I guess I would really advocate in terms of what we do with the digital scholarship.